Hey there, I'm Scott, and this is Tangents. Well, I am going to do something a little bit different today, and I don't know if I'd quite say teased this last time, but I alluded to it at least. I have mixed feelings on talking about this at all. I have mixed feelings about some of the things I'm going to say, and yeah, judge as you will. So, the biggest thing, and just to come out and say it, I got a Model 3. For about a decade, had a Prius, actually my second Prius. Liked a lot of things about that car, but I quit my job at ASU, started working on my own, and was really not in a position to throw around a lot of money on a car for a while. So I kind of decided I'm going to take this car and use it basically, essentially to extinction. Like up to the point where repairing it would be more expensive than getting a new car. And I definitely got there. It made it about 240,000 miles. It still runs, but the head gasket is, I don't know if I'd quite say blown, but on the verge. It's leaking pretty badly. If I took it on the freeway or was using it very much at all, I'm pretty sure it would fail in a pretty bad way. And to fix it, there was already a few $1,000s worth of body work that it needed, another few $1,000s worth of like struts and springs and a bunch of other stuff. I could probably use some transmission work, needed a water pump, the gasket, all of this stuff. Ends up being, to get it working reasonably would have been the down payment on the new car. And to get it actually like in good shape would have been way more expensive than the Blue Book value of the car. So just kind of decided, and I went for actually a fair number of weeks. Certainly over a month, maybe 2 months without a car. Up until then, I kind of started knowing that, it was getting there. And so I was really reducing what I was doing with it. But then basically was carless. I thought about not getting a car for a while, and ultimately, for a variety of reasons, decided, I'm in Arizona, gonna be here for a while, gonna do it. It doesn't, one factor here certainly was my girlfriend is like a 40-minute drive. She just lives in downtown Phoenix, but I live in Gilbert. Gilbert on a map, like as the crow flies, doesn't look that far, but it's literally like 15 minutes just to get to the freeway from where I am. I'm sure it's partially by design, but it's not the most accessible place in a variety of ways, but especially just practically and practically. Anyway, I don't want to go into too much detail on that car. I'd totally get another Prius, although I do find, in fact, I almost did. I thought about it. And I looked at a number of factors, finally went with the Tesla, partly because I like the self-driving, I like the idea of the car. My biggest hesitation there, honestly, was Elon Musk. And just came out today, he is now, at least on paper, the wealthiest man alive. He surpassed Bezos because Tesla's stock has bumped up a little bit. I don't know that his company is worth what its market value is currently, but I guess things are worth whatever people are going to pay for them, and people seem to think that it is. I do have to say, and I'm going to go through a few things, a few thoughts, and I have a whole list of stuff here. Going to be kind of a review of the car. I'm going to add in some B-reel, which I pretty much never do. This one probably will take a day or two to come out because it's going to be more work to put together. But I think it's worth it. At least I have a lot of thoughts on the car. Certainly, I don't want to go into the ethics of buying something from him. It's problematic. I feel very ambivalent about it. I don't feel as bad as if I was spending a lot of money at, say, Home Depot, um, or Chick-fil-A or something of this nature, but definitely gave me a lot of pause. He's got some very serious problems with workers' rights, just a ton of stuff. He's moving to Texas because California is being a pain in the ass to him, but from his perspective. The thing is, of course, he's had, between Tesla and SpaceX, Solar City, and a bunch of other things, he's had many billions of dollars of taxpayer funding. Many, many billions. He's built all of these companies, including, I think, Neuralink and probably the Boring Company, I would guess. Lots of taxpayer money going in there. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I love spending taxpayer money on things like solar, things like making electric vehicles practical, all of this kind of stuff. The problem comes when you take all that money and then you don't pay your fucking bill, you don't pay it forward afterwards. You're taking a lot of advantages from California, and then you're not gonna give back. This is problematic. He's, I'm not even gonna get into, like, he's got some issues with pronouns, and if that means something to you, if you're rolling your eyes, or if you're like me, and it's one of these things where you're like, well, if it matters to somebody, why the fuck not be respectful? I took, when I was an undergrad, I tried to take a lot of, I had a certain general studies requirement set of things that I had to do anyway, but I tried to take as many classes and as many things as I could. And, especially when I was coming to some requirement I had to fill, I kind of found something, like, at each step as much as I could that was not on the beaten path for me. Like, I could have taken something that aligned more with stuff I'd already taken, but why not take something else? So for one of my requirements, I took a women's studies course. And I learned the difference at that time between gender and biological sex. And I gotta tell you, it's one of these things where before you know it, it always bothered me, even when I was a kid, where it would say like gender, male/female, when they were actually asking for biological sex. And the thing that bothered me about it was I was thinking, oh, they just don't want to say sex because they think sex is dirty. And so, turns out, of course, probably biological sex doesn't matter as much as gender there. And biological sex, it's not really A or B. There's a whole variety of things. Whether you're talking genetics or anatomy or any of this. I don't want to get into that shit. Gender is, of course, sort of how you identify, how you present, all of this stuff, how you fit into the culture. I also don't want to get into that. But the short of this is, I think that Elon Musk is kind of a jackass, and I think unnecessarily so. And it bums me the fuck out because I look at SpaceX, they're fucking cool. This year, 2021, I have complete confidence that Starship is going to take off, it's going to land. They've already done this belly flop maneuver, which I'm sure it's one of these things where, as somebody who does a little bit of stuff with robotics, if you were trying to do this without simulations, you could do it. In the 50s, you could do it for sure, but it'd be hard. Today, you can run the whole fucking thing in a computer, and then putting it in hardware is almost just checking the box. It would have, I really believe it would have worked on the first try if they didn't have a pressure problem in one of the fuel header tanks. Or was it an oxygen header tank? I don't remember which one was a problem, but maybe it was both. Either way, ran out of pressure, lost some thrust, crashed into the ground, but the rest of the flight fucking worked. It's pretty impressive. Landing vertically. Something that, people have done it for a while. DCX, the prototype, the Delta Clipper, scale model did it. Apollo, the lunar lander obviously did some of this kind of stuff. It's not new landing vertically, but SpaceX, whatever you think of them, they've pretty much perfected this. I mean, I'm sure they're still gonna have failures, but it's pretty fucking impressive where they are. And you know, if you watch also like the landing profiles, the flight profiles, the control just keeps getting better. You know, it's pretty like even the launch. If you look at earlier Falcon 9 launches, you could see a lot of wobble and a lot of you know, and now their controllers are so fucking good. It just looks like a cartoon. It doesn't even look real. It's very impressive. It bums me the fuck out that this dude's an asshole. Tesla, and I will say, I went in eyes open. I was not expecting this to be a perfect car. But I do think it's a little overrated. It's one of these things, I put it a lot like Apple, because I can go through 1,000 ways that Apple sucks. And I really do think Apple sucks, and I think they've gone downhill since Steve died. And it's still, what bugs the shit out of me is that Apple is still better, significantly better than the competition. I discovered this recently because I was fucking furious after having to get multiple logic boards replaced and having a bunch of failures with my MacBook Pro, in addition to just crazy overheating and the fan running all the time and all this stuff, which they are, you know, they're gonna fix it. They've got their own processors. I'm very confident that when I get an Apple silicon-based Mac, it's gonna be fucking fast and good. I have one of the developer, or some of the developer hardware for that, and it's an old chip, and I gotta say, like, it's obviously it's an ARM architecture instead of Intel. I was nervous. The reason I got the developer thing, I was nervous because we do like firmware builds and other things on Macs. Eventually, we'll probably do it in Linux, just in the cloud because it's easier. But for now, do it on my Mac. And I thought, okay, there's no way this is just gonna work. It's gonna be a pain in the ass, but I'll work through it. I get the thing. I tried it out. I didn't even have to recompile the GCC embedded toolkit. It just works. And it's as fast as on my, you know, my fully loaded 16-inch MacBook Pro. So, you know, and then when I was so frustrated, I got a Surface, got like the top of the line Surface, and it is marginally better, still an Intel chip, but marginally better in terms of heat. But at the same time, so much of a fucking pain in the ass to use. I can't stand it. And it's annoying because, you know, I do CAD stuff. I don't do as much as I used to, but I do dabble in it still. And I would have SolidWorks or Altium or something like that. And you need the PC for it. Using this in emulation on a Mac or in dual boot is a pain in the ass. So you kind of need a PC if you're using them. And Windows is just terrible. I mean, as bad as Mac is, Windows is worse. As many things as I'm going to say about Tesla, and I will talk about some good stuff too, but all of these things, bear in mind that Tesla is still, in my opinion, probably about the best car you could buy right now. I like it enough that I bought one. Yeah, it's kind of problematic. It sucks that there's not somebody better out there. And it's, you know, I mean, from so many different perspectives. I mean, just the interface, user interface, and I think I'm going to go through. I have a list, and this list is very long. I will try to go through the bulk of this. I'll probably touch on some other stuff, but I do want to, you know, I do want to cover all of this. So I'm going to try to fit it in. This is going to be a long video, but probably my standard like hour-ish. I'm going to push on it. So anyway, yeah, one thing actually, before I get totally into that, one thing that I've definitely noticed is with the Prius, I always noticed a certain sort of reaction that other drivers had to me. Some weird stuff, like you get people kind of racing with you, because, you know, it's like getting in a fight with your grandma. Okay, if you win, you beat up an old lady. If you lose, an old lady beat you up. there's no upside to trying to race with a Prius, believe me. And I'm not going to race with you anyway, but it's so weird. Like, you get the person coming up to you, you get the big trucks, kind of like aggressively. There's a certain there's a certain type of truck. There are a lot of trucks anyway, but that are weird. But somehow people seem to gravitate to these like giant white trucks. And these are also the ones that often would have like the flags and a bunch of other bullshit. Incidentally, yesterday was the 6th. Today's the 7th when I'm recording this. There was a whole fucking slew of Trump motherfuckers who stormed and penetrated the Capitol building in DC and elsewhere. I don't even want to talk about that now. I'll get into it in another one of these when it's more focused, but holy shit. Like, these fucking people, like, truly. And they're also, like, there's video of them chanting, USA, USA. But they're sitting there trying to undo a free and fair democratic election for a fucking asshole. That's not the fucking country. I'm sorry. They're taking down our flag and putting up the fucking Confederate flag, or putting up these MAGA flags. It might as well be a fucking swastika flag. I'm sorry. Fuck these people. And I'll tell you something else. Actually, before I get back to the Tesla thing, I watch a decent amount of YouTube. And one thing that I've appreciated recently with all this shit going on is there are a lot of people who kind of kept their politics close to the vest. Adam Savage also used to not mention it very often, but then people have kind of let it leak out a little bit recently, and I really appreciate it, because this stuff is... Yeah, now, I do agree, you should be able to go through life and not have politics be like front and center to everything. But right now, it's not something that you can just ignore. It's something where, like, you have people breaking in and like forcing their way into the Capitol, have cops letting them in. You have cops taking selfies with them. I mean, ACAB, but also holy shit. It's a fucked up situation. I've talked about that at length. I will again, but just to mention that. So anyway, getting back to this, other drivers, when I'm in the Tesla, the difference that I've found is I do still get occasionally, it probably doesn't help that I have a Black Lives Matter sticker on my car. Yesterday, when this shit was going on, I had a couple of trucks like being really weirdly aggressive and kind of racing with me a little bit. Again, I say racing with me. They're not, like, I'm not racing them, but they're like, they pull up to you and they're like, and kind of, you feel like they're trying to race you. But speaking of racing, I'll be on the freeway, and like 4 or 5 times so far, I've had the car for a few weeks now, handful of times really, probably, I'll get like the equivalent of a Geo Metro, like a tiny little car with no pickup at all, and you can feel them kind of like racing with, like, edging up against you, and they're kind of racing with you. And I'm sitting there, like, most of the time, I'm driving very relaxed. I'm not like, hitting it. But one thing that I do really like about the car, and one thing that I don't think these people understand, is that thing's got some fucking pickup. I just have I didn't get the performance one. I just have the long range one, which, if you're thinking about getting one, and again, Elon, questionable. There is an interesting thing. There's no ethical consumption under capitalism. This is a statement people make a lot. I think, yes, it's true, but it's also problematic because it means at a certain point you could almost excuse doing anything, because you can go, well, there's nothing you can do, so why not just do whatever you're going to do? I don't quite go that far. I'm definitely like getting away from Amazon. I'm getting away from GoDaddy. Trying to be as ethical a consumer as possible, but still buying a Tesla, so, judge me as you will. Anyway, trying to get to this stuff. So I'm going to go through the other drivers. The pickup, fucking good. Acceleration, I get, if I hit it, I will go 0 to 60 in, I think, like 4.2 seconds. That's without the performance package. And I gotta tell you, it's really fucking nice. Even like when people are not being just assholes, you're merging into the freeway and there's somebody there through either, maybe it's assholishness, but I just assume they're out of it. And you're trying to get in and they're right over there. Normally in the Prius, I would like hit the brakes or like fall back and then get behind them. But they're kind of like matching my speed. And a couple days ago, that was happening. I had plenty of room ahead. They had plenty of room ahead. I didn't even push it down. In fact, I probably didn't even push the accelerator halfway. I blew past them. And I gotta tell you, like, not the best for fuel economy or for energy efficiency, I guess I should say, but fucking nice. You know, you can be in a situation like that and get out of it. I don't want to race with people, but you know, having a car that has that kind of pickup is really nice. You get people who are assholes, you don't have to deal with them. But that being said, you know, I'll have these people in the like little Geo Metro-y thing kind of racing me, and I'm not like why it's the same grandma problem. I don't want to be the one that beats up the grandma or it gets beaten up by the grandma. I don't really care that much, but it's so weird because it keeps happening. And I'm just like, dude, you realize, like, I'm not going to do it, but if I wanted to, I wouldn't even have to go like a quarter of the way down and I could just blow so far past you. Why are you doing this? Like, what the fuck? It's interesting driving different vehicles. It's something I always notice when I rent a car too. The way people treat you is very different based on, especially, I mean, there are some cars that are kind of generic, but there are certain cars where you get a certain personality of, you know, like the person who's interacting with you does certain things differently. And Prius has definitely got, you know, some energy to it. Tesla has definitely got some energy to it. It's, you know, Honda Civic has some energy to it. My mom has a Kia Soul that has some energy to it. My sister, she also has a Model 3. Before she got that, had an Audi, and you get a different kind of interaction with people. I've always found that it's right up there with the way that you can see how a car is driving. And even though you have no direct connection to the person behind the car, there's a ton of like nonverbal communication that's coming out of that car. And you can kind of read into that a lot. You know a lot about that person. If you pay it, I mean, maybe you don't. I know a lot about that person just looking. I can feel, oh, they're gonna come into my lane. Oh, this person's doing this. Oh, this person's on a cell phone. Oh, this person is, and you can start making a lot of educated guesses about this kind of stuff. And often you're right. If you don't have that, work on your antenna because you can develop that, I guarantee you. Which does get into the full self-driving, actually. The full self-driving, now, to be fair, this is a moving target. Years ago, my sister's had her Model 3, I think, for 3 years now. I rode in it at the time. Previously, I'd been in like a Model S, and I guess that's it, a couple Model S's, but never with the full self-driving. My sister, I guess, doesn't have the advanced autopilot, but just has, or doesn't have the full self-driving, but has the just standard autopilot. And I was in there, and it's just like, the thing that I kept thinking is, wow, this is, you know, the difference between the reality of this and what Musk was claiming is just fucking ridiculous. I mean, it's not quite like Elizabeth Holmes level ridiculous, but it's pretty big. It's gotten better. I will say that I paid extra for the full self-driving package because I don't know, I like driving, but I love the idea that eventually maybe the thing will have full autonomy. I don't have full confidence that that will ever happen with the current hardware, at least, because I have to say, like, the cameras are really pretty shitty. And I understand, I mean, when you're doing computer vision, there's a trade-off between like bandwidth and processing power. You don't want to have like the best cameras in the world, and you have, aside from the fact that they just cost a lot. If you get super high resolution cameras, that's a shit ton of data that you have to push around, and processing it is really intensive. So, and you can actually, I mean, if you look at human vision, the image that we actually see, the image that you think you see, is this composite, it's kind of a super resolution composite model of the world based on vision and a lot of educated guesses and sort of inferences about things. So you can do it with a pretty low resolution image. If you saw the actual video feed coming from your retina, you have blind spots, you have imperfect stuff, you only have real color kind of at the fova, sort of the center. You'll have these, the resolution falls way off as you get off to the sides, the color falls off. It's mostly cones in the fova. You get out, it's mostly rods. So it's like basically black and white, low resolution, and you really only see clearly like in a tiny area. And your eyes are constantly scanning around and you're putting the picture together. So again, you can do that with a pretty low resolution. That being said, the resolution on these cameras, and maybe they're better than they look, but resolution, pretty shitty. And so for the backup camera, I'm not saying it was better on my Prius, but it was definitely not, my 10-year-old Prius, definitely not that much worse. And I'm sitting there thinking, and you look at the shutter speed and all this, and again, like I understand there are many constraints here. You need something that's fast enough shutter speed and that works under a variety of lighting conditions, a variety of, I'm sure they're not just fucking around. They're doing what they can, doing as good of a job as they can, but it's a little underwhelming. Let's just say that. The tablet, the sort of 15-inch screen that is the dashboard for the Model 3. It works. It's definitely, and I had no problem. I guess two things. I've had one, not even really major software update, but since I got it, one update that changed the interface made zero impact to me. I'm not saying like, there are things that I noticed that are different, but the transition for me was not a big deal. Now I've used beta software for everything anyway, so I'm kind of used to it. But just, I've seen a lot of people complain about it. Definitely not, a lot of, I could go on at length about the problems with the software. One thing that I can't stand also is I can go on at length, don't really seem to have a good way to report a bug or to file like suggestions and this kind of thing. There is a voice thing. You hit one of the buttons, and then you say bug report, blah, blah, blah. It has a lot of constraints. Like it only lets you, well, first off, it's speech. So it doesn't work that well. Speech, generally speaking, is pretty shitty. Even the thing about speech that's interesting, and I think this is, there's a lot of stuff about machine learning. I don't talk much about some of the stuff that I do, but I have a lot of thoughts on some of these things, and I professionally do some of this stuff. Machine learning is interesting because, and if you're looking at speech recognition, Alexa, Siri, all of these things, in terms of individual word recognition, computer, and I think this is not even a controversial thing to say, at this point, recognizing a face, computers are better at it than you or I. Pretty much, I think that's true. Recognizing a word, computers are better at it than you or I. At the very least, they're as good as we are. So you're like, anyone who's ever interacted with Siri or the Tesla speech or Alexa, any of these things, you gotta go like, how could they possibly be better than we are? And the thing is, yeah, they're better at that part of the processing pipeline, but that's not where it stops for us. That's the input stage. We have a whole bunch of stuff that comes after that, puts that stuff together and builds a model and does all kinds of other stuff. And then, if you mishear something, your brain auto-corrects it. I don't even hear the wrong thing or read the wrong thing most of the time. My brain just auto-corrects it, and my experience is that it was what it was intended to be, even if you look again and it's totally different. Computers don't yet have that, and that's I would say a much harder problem than the actual just word recognition part. You can do statistical models, and there are a lot of things that do help, but still, we're not there. That's all I'm saying. And you also, well, and I don't want to get too deep into it, but the bug report thing, the speech recognition, underwhelming. It's good, has some issues. It caps you at like 3 lines of stuff, which is fine most of the time, and I've gotten good at trying to be terse. Although you might gather, I'm not generally a terse person. I'm a little verbose. It's hard for me to condense stuff down, especially when I have complicated thoughts. But I have to say, you know, like you get into this thing and then you get what you want out, usually cuts off the last few words. And worse, I don't think these things are going anywhere. I think they're just going into a log file either on the computer inside, or maybe it goes to the cloud, but I don't think they're really checking them. It basically feels like just farting into the wind. Totally worthless. Often also, and this is giving them a lot of extra bug reports, I'm sure, from people that try to do it, but you fuck up the bug report, the thing fucks up the bug report, and then you have to put the same thing in like 2 or 3 times before you get what you wanted to say out. So you have to put it in a few times before you get what you wanted to say out. It's just generally, it's not the best interface for this. Feels like it's going nowhere. Not really satisfying. I don't like it. So I will say this. The car, it's an interesting problem. And I really want to say, if you're getting one of these things, or anything really, you have to have your reasonable set of expectations. If you think that a movie is going to be the best thing ever, even if it's good, you're going to be disappointed. If you think the movie's going to be shitty and it's okay, you might like it actually more. So expectations matter. I went into this expecting to get a lot of fit and finish problems with the thing. I've seen, you don't have to go very far on YouTube to find tons of videos on Teslas with fit and finish problems. For the most part, actually, mine is pretty good. There are some things that are not quite there. I do give them, I have some professional experience with fit and finish and tolerances and this kind of stuff. It's much harder, basically, than you would think, to get things that feel like, to have things that line up perfectly and all of this kind of stuff. It's not trivial. And considering that, I think they've done a pretty decent job. I think also they've kind of ironed out a lot of their issues, but there are definitely some things where gaps are not uniform or things are not aligned quite right. If you look closely, you're going to be a little disappointed. The only thing that really bugs me is I have a couple of things, like I have a chip on the paint. I had this the day that I got it, and I'm pretty sure I didn't do it. In fact, I did not do it. Had it on the car when I got it. It's annoying to buy a brand new car and have like a little, it's just a tiny chip, but it's like, why would you not catch this at the QC stage? I have a thing like on the insulating foam on one of the doors. There's this weird discoloration and foaming. Like, I'm pretty sure like something rubbed against it or something was leaning on it. I don't know exactly what happened, but it's weird. And it's weird partly because it's like, it's not that big of a deal, but it's a little annoying. But overall, I can't really complain. Most of the stuff is pretty solid. I have a lot more complaints about the computer. The tablet feels, it doesn't help that I'm used to Retina displays and very fast processors. It's fast enough, but really feels like several-year-old, at least, technology. It does not feel like the latest iPad. It feels pretty slow. And especially like if you try to use the YouTube app, so there's a YouTube app, there's a Netflix app, try to open these things up, shockingly slow. And also the browser on there, for whatever reason, is not trusted by Google, so you can't log into your Google account. There's a workaround that I'm not even going to mention because it's so shitty. you have to use a third-party thing, and then you sign into that, and they have some probably old API for logging in, and then once you're signed in there, it's probably like OAuth thing that, you know, lets you into the... It feels very shitty. Does not feel like the way it should be. It's very slow. You can't log in. Yeah, some issues. Yeah, and the car, you know, you look at the list price. And certainly also, I was not expecting this to be a luxury car. Yeah, my previous car, Prius, I'm not, you know, like, I'm not going for like a Mercedes kind of class thing. And I also, you know, the thing that shocked me and really struck me when the first time I got into a Model S many years ago was, you know, it's nice. It's definitely nice. It's like a nice Honda Civic. But you go in there and you're kind of, and I mean that, like, I don't think it's a nicer class than that, but you go in and, like, there are a lot of things that are sort of, for the price of the car, you would like to see something better, you know? You'd like to see, like, a little bit higher quality, a little bit more thought into certain things. And again, it's nice, you know. They have what they call vegan leather. I like that it's not actual leather, but vegan leather, of course, just means plastic. It's not the most luxury kind of thing that you could do. Although, personally, if you give me the choice between synthetic and actual leather, I'd take the synthetic. But, yeah, you think about it as plastic. It's like, eh. Now, I will say this. Seems very resistant to stains and scratches. Granted, I've only had it a few weeks, but can't complain about that. I got the white seats. Which are ridiculously white, like excessively white. Thought about getting black, but it's a hot place that I live, and there's a glass roof. I thought, you know, maybe I'll get the white, just to try it anyway. No problems with a dog so far in there. It's yeah, some nice things about that. But the luxury price thing, kind of, you know, like, when you end up getting a few options on it and you're not getting, I mean, if you want to get the one that's like the cheapest that they claim to have, I don't even know if you can get that directly on the website. You have to go through an extra process. You go on the website and buy one, and it's a fun activity if you want. Go to Tesla.com, price out a car, yeah, or look at the pre-owned ones that they have. It's not the cheapest car. Not an, you know, like, there are much more expensive cars, not the cheapest. And I understand a lot of this is the batteries, a lot of it is, there is good technology in there, there's a lot of R&D that goes into this stuff. But there's a kind of tension between, okay, you know, some things are really nice, and a lot of things feel pretty good, but then there are other things that just feel like a little, not quite polished, little sort of lower tier, a little lower end. The thing that, like, the performance on the video, the performance on the tablet, the lack of retina, and it's definitely not like super low resolution, but I can definitely see the pixels, and my vision is not as good as it once was, but I can see the pixels just sitting there driving. It's like, you know, and I'm definitely used to the color balance and some of the things from Apple's, you know, LCDs. You get in that and, you know, not great. Now, it is a vast improvement from my previous Prius, which was, again, like a 10-year-old display, which was already old at the time. Had a, I mean, I got it new, but it wasn't the best display you could get at the time. It was a resistive touchscreen versus the difference between that and a capacitive touchscreen, fucking huge. But then there are things like, I don't want to go too much into the details of some of this stuff, I guess. I'm gonna, fuck it. I will go through a little bit. Display's mostly okay. Door handles, they're different, but I have to say, when I first tried them on my sister's car, felt a little weird. The Model 3 doesn't have the present sort of normal handles that the Model S has. Those feel like a normal handle, and then it just sort of tucks in. It's very cool. A lot of complexity that you probably don't need. A lot of extra cost. The Model 3, it's kind of almost like an airplane handle in the sense that it's flush. and then you push in the forward or the front with your thumb if you do it right. The back comes up into your hand, and then pop it open. Feels fine to me. I don't even think about it. But it is a thing where there's a tiny bit of learning for someone getting in, and especially when they're leaving the car. There's a button that you press. It takes people a few tries to know, okay, press the button. There is an emergency release, but the button lowers the window and opens the car. The emergency release doesn't lower the window, which means that it's not sealed properly. Yeah, which is probably, yeah. I think it doesn't do like permanent damage, but it definitely can pull out some stripping and stuff, I've heard. Yeah, that's fine. I have the 2021, or the sort of early 2021 version. They don't really have model years for Tesla, but they have like kind of continuous revisions, and the release that I have was the current release as I record this. Had a few changes from the previous, including, like, I guess a big one that I never was bothered with the Prius. The Prius that I have is, you know, again, or like 10 years old. I had a manual hatchback to put up and put down. Never bothered me. Never seemed like a big deal to do. A lot of Tesla owners, I guess, didn't like that the Model 3 had that. It's not a hatchback, it's a sedan, but still, same idea. The new one has a self-opening and closing thing. I have to say it's kind of nice. I didn't think that I would like it, but I don't mind it. It's definitely not a thing where I'd be like, yeah, I wouldn't turn it down if you were going to give it to me for free. Not like night or day sort of thing. Now the front trunk, that's a little interesting. I don't know. There's something about it. You can find a lot of videos on this online, like how to close there's literally, if you search on YouTube for how to close Model 3 frunk, or front trunk, you'll see people explaining this. It's a bad sign when you have something like that people are making videos on how to do it. I guess, you know, there's a reason for it, because like the doors, actually, the doors, I feel like I can't say that word right. I normally don't, I'm not aware of my accent. Not that I have much of an accent, but the accent that I have, don't normally hear it, but I say doors. Anyway, the doors, if you don't slam them a little bit, they don't close all the way. Kind of a little bit annoying, actually. You get used to it and you kind of do it. But it's definitely like, it takes a little And I'm sure this is for sealing and maybe either for wind or just, you know, for noise or whatever it's for. Takes a little bit of extra push. The frunk takes this to a whole other level, because if you pop it open, first off, obviously not, well, not obviously, but it's not self-opening and closing. So you have to manually push it down. And it has a ridiculous amount of force required to do it. And it's not really like, your impulse is to just push in the center and the front. I guess it's not good for it because you can kind of bend in the sheet metal. So most people have, like in these videos, they're saying like, oh, you put each hand on either side, and I do it with one hand and kind of like my fingers separated out, but it's very weird. And every time I do it, it's a little annoying. Every time my girlfriend has done it, it's like, yeah, extra, like, takes a little extra like step to make sure that it's really closed. Yeah, and often if you didn't know that you need to do a little bit extra here, it would not be closed. So it's a little annoying. Now the converse of that is it's really nice if you are, say, in a pandemic and you're getting takeout a lot, and that takeout is pretty funky, and you just put the funky takeout in the frunk, kind of contains the smell. That I'm not complaining about at all. It's pretty nice. They put in these middle scroll wheels on the steering wheel. I don't know. It's not as nice, but there's a membrane switch. Maybe even, I think it's a membrane switch. It's very sensitive in the Prius that I had. I would have rather something like that. The scroll wheels, They feel kind of good going up and down, but if you're doing things like, if you're resetting the screen, you have to push in. And when you push in, it's very easy to scroll it while you're doing that. Not the best. It's okay, like you can do it, but it's a little annoying versus like having just a button that you'd press. I would much rather that, and it would be fewer mechanical parts. It'd be easier to make the thing feel okay. I guess people like a nicely knurled piece of metal. It feels more luxurious, but for me, it's like, give me a little tactile, like not necessarily like active haptic feedback, but like have something where I can feel I'm pushing something in, but I don't need the wheel. The wheel is a little bit, but the pressing thing is annoying. I don't like it. The map. So I don't want to go too much into the software on the thing, but the map is nice because it is like live Google Maps kind of stuff. Can't complain about that. It's pretty cool. And obviously, like, you don't expect the same stuff that you get in the software that you have on the Prius, but the Prius has favorites. The Tesla has favorites. The Prius favorites, one of the things I kind of like, I've had my car for 10 years, I have all these favorites from people, and most of them are people that no longer live in the places that I've got favorites listed. But I drive around and you see the favorites on the map as little flags. And it's kind of nice. You drive around and you're like, oh, Isan used to have an apartment there when we were in grad school. And that's, oh, Roberto, this is where Flavio lives. And you go by and you're like, oh, this is kind of, I don't know why I always enjoyed it. It's like, this is Erica's house. She moved out like 5, maybe even 7 years ago. I don't even know how long. But, I'll drive by that area and I see Erica there. It's silly, but I like it. And it is practical as well, just, like if you're actually going someplace, it's nice to be able to just see, oh, here is the place you're going, or one of the places that you might be going, and they're just on the map. Or, oh, I'm going by Gil's house, or whatever. I like that. It annoys me that I can still put in favorites, but they don't show up there unless you search for them. It annoys me also, like if you do the search, you do a Google search or even Apple Maps. Apple Maps is not as good as Google's Maps, I'm afraid, but it's okay. You do the search, it puts up the results on the map, because why the fuck wouldn't you? And then you can see, like, okay, there are 5 of these places nearby. Which one do you want? The Tesla Maps, you search for it, and it gives you a list. It gives you a list. The list is great. What the fuck are you going to do with the list? Do I know any of these places? Now, granted, I know if I want the closest one, okay. But if I know, for example, I want to go to Dutch Brothers in Tempe, and I'm not near, or I'm closer to 3 other Dutch Brothers, the fact that I know where it is by the street is, I can find it, but it's much nicer to just type in Dutch Brothers, go to the map, and then you see, oh, these are the ones, you tap the one you want, and then you go. Why not? And the thing about that is, of course, it could be fixed in an update, but I don't have anyone that I can report the fucking thing to. It's annoying. It's really annoying, actually. Another thing, actually, that I'm not sure this is very useful, but one of the things that the Prius had that I really liked was breadcrumbs. And by breadcrumbs, it's basically like an ant trail. As you're driving, it would leave little dots, and the dots would fade over time. Mixed feelings on the fading, but given my druther, the nice thing about this is if you're going to somebody's place, you can kind of see how to get in and out very easily. You can kind of see, oh, I always go down this road, and it's nice to sort of see that line get reinforced and the other ones that you don't take kind of disappear. I like it. I don't know why. I really liked it. And in principle, in the thing in there, I don't know how much memory it has or storage, but I would guess you could do a lot more than what's in the Prius, which is annoyingly limited, but it's still there. The Tesla does not have that. What it does have is real-time traffic data from other Teslas, which I don't find, I guess on the freeway it's kind of useful. It's not like the iPhone Maps, Apple Maps thing, where they're using iPhones, because those are everywhere. Teslas, they're much more limited. And so what it turns out, from my perspective, to do more than anything is kind of show you where other Tesla owners live. You drive down a main road, you see, oh, there's a Tesla owner that lives in that subdivision. There's a Tesla owner over there. Because you can see there are little red and yellow things where they've been driving. I don't need that kind of traffic information, but the ant trails for me, the breadcrumbs, would be awesome. Seems like pretty fucking simple and nice. Yeah. Now here's one, language. This is super in the favor of the car. I have all my stuff in French as a general rule. I had the Prius in French. I even had I'd have it in kilometers per hour instead of miles per hour, but it was kind of a pain in the ass because I live in a country that uses the devil's units and everything is in miles per hour here. So yeah, you have to translate it. I basically got to the point where I knew what each speed was and kind of, okay, well, in this zone, I'm gonna go at this speed. Yeah, basically there. And if there's a cop nearby, you flip it back to MPH and then you make sure that you're really doing it right. But, for the most part, didn't need that. But the odometer would be stuck in miles. The trip things were in miles. A bunch of things were in miles per gallon and this kind of stuff. The Tesla, you change the language and it changes it everywhere. It's a nice thing about having everything in one computer. You change the units, it changes it everywhere. And you can also, like if you want the tire pressures in PSI, or I was going to say kilopascal, but I think it's bar. I have mine in PSI because 42, 46 PSI, a hell of a lot more useful than like 3.1 bar. It's one of these things, I'm generally not a fan of the devil's units. My thermostat is in Celsius. Now my thermostat in the car is in Celsius. I like that better. But I will say, grudgingly, millimeters, meters, kilometers, all this stuff, much better. No argument for inches and feet and yards and all this bullshit. They're dumb. But degrees Fahrenheit are kind of more natural. PSI for tire pressure, kind of nicer and more natural, I think. It's just, like a half a degree Celsius is kind of, it's not like the difference between freezing and boiling, but it's a lot more than you would like. A degree in Fahrenheit or two, kind of feels more like it. And I don't think this is just a matter of what you grow up with. I really think Celsius is just a little too dense. If it was if a half a degree difference in Celsius was a degree difference, I think it'd be fine. But, boiling is 200 instead of 100 now. But you go from like room temperature, I'll have my thermostat here will be set to say 22. And I get a little cold and then put it up to 23 and it's hot and then it's like, yeah. Whereas if it's in Fahrenheit, whatever the equivalent of that is, you go up or down a degree or two, it doesn't feel like that big of a difference. But as an aside, the units in the car actually work and you change it once and it changes it everywhere. The Prius has all these different embedded microcontrollers. They're all separate. It has a clock that's not set from it has a GPS, which means that it's getting basically atomic time data to the GPS, but it also has like an old shitty quartz clock that lost a shit ton of time, impressively far off. I'd go a week and it would be off by minutes. I'd go a month and it'd be off by like 5 or 10 minutes. How it could be this bad is kind of shocking to me. I would imagine that if I'm pretty anal about that, I would reset it all the time, but if you didn't give a fuck, your clock would have to be off by a considerable amount. And it seemed to be biased too, so it's not like, oh, it's just, now it's off 5 minutes this way, a week later it'll be 5 minutes the other way, it just kind of, balances out. It seems to be, I don't remember if it was going up or down, but it seems to always be consistently off in the same direction, which means you wait long enough and you don't reset it, and you're going to be off by a lot. So I like that in the thing. Getting probably atomic time, either from the cellular network or GPS or whatever, it just sets the clock. It's nice. The voice. I already talked about this. Bug reporting, annoying. The web and YouTube, I already talked about that. It's funny, I'm sitting here worrying about getting all this stuff in. I've already talked about a lot of this stuff. The games and bullshit. So there was an update a couple weeks ago, maybe it was a week ago, I don't know. Supposed to be well, the next one I guess is going to be version 11. This was 10 point something. And I think the version 11 just wasn't ready in time, but Elon on Twitter said, oh, this next one's fire. It's going to be super cool. And at the same time, there are all of these videos about full self-driving beta that look much better than the full self-driving that they have in there. But, didn't come out. Probably not ready for prime time, I guess, but yeah. It did come out with some games. I can't imagine, maybe I'll someday play them as a novelty, but I can't imagine playing a game on the thing. I can barely imagine, I can understand, okay, you're sitting there waiting for it to charge, you want to watch a video or something, you do have your phone, but yeah, it just seems weird to me. Not really a big, exciting thing. Here's one, seat memory. Now, on one hand, I like the fact that I can adjust the seat and then it stores my preferences. I don't like that it seems to be an open loop sort of stepper mechanism and seems to lose some steps. And I don't mean like it's losing a tiny bit. I mean, it's losing a lot of steps. Because I'll go in and so I have easy in and out and it's set up so I sit down, I go into gear and it pushes me forward. Not that I need easy in and out, but I'm the kind of guy that I have the feature, I kind of want to use it for the most part. Games notwithstanding. But I get in, go, it sits into my thing, which is not perfect, incidentally, because, and this is one thing, I wish there was a tool that would help you. It's only 3 parameters, well, 3 plus a lumbar support, which I don't use. But I would love to have something, okay, this is how you find the best, most comfortable seating position. They don't have that, and so I monkey with it and I kind of figure it out. I feel like I'm probably trapped in a local minimum, and there's probably a much more comfortable seating position, but I'm never going to find it because it's a 3-dimensional space with a lot of. It's not like you can exhaustively search it or compare between A and B for the whole thing. So yeah. The thing that's shocking about it, though, is it's just gradually drifting further and further off. So like every time I get in, get out, get in, get out, get in, get out, I'm a little bit off. And at first, I thought this was just me. I thought I was just like losing my mind. Like, am I sitting differently? What the hell? And then it became like enough that there was no question. It's definitely, I'm sure what's happening is it's a stepper and it's storing, okay, go 2,000 steps this way, and then go 2,000 steps back, and then go 2,000 steps this way, and then go 2,000 steps back. And you would think if that was, if there's no slip, if everything is perfect, you're not losing a step, then it would be perfectly reproducible. But I don't think there's any closed loop. I don't think there's anything to measure. It'd be funny if I was wrong about this, but I'm pretty sure. Like maybe there's a stop sensor, like you go all the way and then it has like a little click and it knows, okay, that's as far as you can go. Probably has that for safety, I would guess. But other than that, between these two settings, I'm pretty sure it's losing not just a couple steps, but a decent amount each time. And then I'm just slowly like further and further back and leaning further and further back. Like the thing is relaxing a little bit. It's kind of annoying. It's really fucking annoying, actually. Especially like I spend some time dialing it in and it's just getting worse and worse over time and I have to keep dialing it in perpetually, it seems. So which seems to defeat the purpose of having memory. I don't know. It's pretty fucking annoying, actually. I'd like to have a closed loop servo if I could there, or have something that, something that's indexed so it knows, okay, this is where it'd be. And again, if it is already like that and I'm just imagining this, it'd be hilarious. Or if I have just a weird defect in mine, it'd be hilarious. It seems to be, has a glass roof, sort of a feature of it. I'm a little concerned about this for the summer in Phoenix, but we'll see how it goes. But I definitely will say this, that it's not, well, it's really nice if there's rain. It doesn't rain often here. A couple days after I got it, it rained. Or maybe it was immediately after I got it, it was raining a little bit. So it was nice. I got to try it in the rain, and it feels really satisfying. It's like having it's the problem. You have a well-insulated roof, not that I do here pointing it, but if you have a nicely insulated house and it's raining outside, you lose part of the experience. You almost need a sound system to pipe that, like transducers or something to pipe that shit in. The rain on the roof, very satisfying, feels very nice. Nice to feel like you're in it, but also in your little warm bubble. I'm worried about the glass in the summer, but it is very dark. It's very well tinted, which means that when you're in Phoenix and you have blue skies all the time, you look up and there's no contrast. Like if there are clouds, you can see. But if there's no contrast, it almost might as well just be an opaque roof. Versus the sunroof or moonroof in my Prius, it was smaller. I never opened that, so I don't really mind that you can't open the one in here. But it sort of, I knew like I could look up and I could see blue sky, versus now I look up and I'm like, it could just be a gray sky up there, or it could, a blue sky, or just a gray ceiling. And I know, I'm aware of which one it is, but not that impressive. Now I mentioned and talked a little bit about the full self-driving. I don't know, it's one of these things where I'm a very big believer with automation, that doing things, if you can nail it, you have enough nines of reliability and everything just works, automation is fantastic. If you don't touch anything and it just knows what you want to do, it's magical. But if you have automation that's a little flaky, it's worse than nothing. And the full self-drive, currently, I cannot highly endorse. Let's just say that. It's very impressive. I've driven from Gilbert on the freeway all the way to Central Phoenix, and basically had the full self-driving going most of the time. There are definitely some times where it sort of flakes out, and it's almost, I imagine when it gets a little bit better, this is going to be even worse. But right now, it's almost good enough that you get complacent, and then it does something crazy, and then you're like, holy shit. If you use it on like the local streets, the current version, again, this is not the beta, this is what is in the release software. The full self-drive, it's very good at lane keeping, a little flaky with lights. Every time I go through a school zone, it misses, because they'll have the 35 mile per hour when flashing. Now it's great that the thing can translate 35 miles per hour into kilometers per hour, but it doesn't see that. It sees the 35 mile an hour thing as a stoplight, and it thinks I'm still in a 45 zone. If I had it driving there and I wasn't paying attention, I know you're supposed to pay attention, but if you didn't and you were trying to use full self-driving currently, it just keep going and you blow through the school zone. The school zones, a lot of them have like a crosswalk with a 15 zone with the speed limit in the center of the street. It never sees that, ever. And the reason I know this is I'm driving manually, but it shows you what it thinks the speed limit is, and it still thinks it's 45, because it totally ignored the 35 flashing one, and it doesn't see the 15. Pretty fucking dangerous and bad. Now, maybe the full self-drive, when it upgrades, will get better. The cameras give me some pause. I worry. Yeah, I can see. The thing is, it's hard to tell because you don't see the raw data. You see the sort of inferred ranges from the ultrasound sensors. inferred stuff from the radar and the cameras and all this stuff. It has like a model of the world, and the model is pretty good, but it's also, and this was the thing that struck me the most when I was in my sister's a few years ago. Cars are like popping in and out of existence, and at the time, now they're a little bit more consistent, but at the time they would just like jump places and do crazy shit. The orientation didn't even make sense 90% of the time on the road. It'd just be like, oh, there's a truck perpendicular to the direction of traffic. They seem to have kind of ironed a lot of that out. And again, the beta seems to be using a different system. I think it's just using sort of like well, they make a big deal out of this, but 4D in the sense of, like you have position and you have things have a trajectory, and then you're using some kind of inference model to, I mean, like more advanced, I'm sure, than this, but like a Kalman filter that's sort of saying, okay, well, here's the data that I've got, here's what I think the state is, and you're doing some state modeling from that. It's not that impressive, and it's impressive in the sense that, when you understand what's involved in it, it's cool, but it's also like, given the amount of time that they've put into this, it's not, it doesn't really instill a lot of confidence. There are things also where like, it'll be driving on a curve and totally lose track of what you were gonna do and do crazy shit, like try to change lanes in the middle of an intersection. Like if I stop it, obviously I'm paying attention, but it really wants to do stuff where you're like, what the fuck is wrong with you, car? It's very, now obviously I'm sure internally it has some decision-making process for like, is it a good time to allow automated lane changes? But it doesn't give you any indication of what it thinks is the state or why any of this. So it's just like, sometimes it will magically change lanes for you, sometimes not. And on the freeway, it's pretty cool changing lanes. I'd say almost nicer than doing it manually. On surface streets, it's very weird. And also, not just because like the profile is like, on the freeway, it seems to be like, gradual and gets you into the next lane and it's fine. On the surface street, it really like cranks the steering wheel and gets you into the next lane. It'll get you there, but it's like, what the fuck? One thing that it does that's just fucking annoying is, I mean, part of it, to be fair, it's like a new driver learning. I understand this. I'm sure in a year it'll be better. I know in a couple years ago it was worse. Maybe it'll be much better this year. I don't know. But it also is kind of like an asshole, because I see a lot of people, like you'll go on YouTube or Twitter and you'll see people, they're like, oh, I got my fucking Tesla, and they're in full self-drive in the left lane of traffic, driving like a motherfucking asshole. And the car doesn't really encourage you to drive right and pass left. And they're like, well, if you have a full self, if you have this was, I'm not going to name the guy, but very tempted to. Got in a little thing with some dude on Twitter, who's, he's got a Model 3 and he's like so proud of how good the full self-driving is. Again, your mileage may vary. It's okay. It's impressive, but it's not great. But he's explaining this, and then he's like, well, you won't care that I'm driving like an asshole in the left lane because you'll get yourself a Tesla. And it's like, okay, this is not a good plan, especially like you're in LA. There are a lot of people that don't have the money for a fucking Tesla. They're not going to get full self-driving. Maybe they will in a decade or two when that stuff comes down, but it's not going to be tomorrow. So now you're driving like an asshole for a decade, and to be fair, LA, fucking terrible traffic. I know you've probably never heard that before. What the fuck? No, LA is terrible for traffic. It's nice being in a car where it's handling that for you, kind of. But it's also like, it's got some issues. And the thing about it actually is, it's an interesting thing. I've had people, before I got the car, watched a lot of videos and listened to a lot of people's opinions of their Teslas. And I tried to do it, mainly because I didn't want to have unreasonable expectations. And the thing that I heard from people, I heard a lot of people say they don't like it. I did hear a lot of people say, well, you know, it's in stop and go traffic. At the end of the trip, you feel much more relaxed. You don't feel like, because it's an interesting thing. If I drive to LA, by the time I get to LA, it's like a 6-hour drive. You get to LA, or 5.5 or whatever, get to LA and you feel tired because you don't think about it, but you're focused and like you're vigilant this whole fucking trip and you're driving actively. Yeah, so having the car do a lot of that for you sounds nice, but I gotta say, if you're letting the car do all this stuff for you and you're not paying attention, I think you're a menace and you're probably fucking dangerous, because it is already pretty good to the point where it makes you complacent and then it'll fuck something up and you'll kill somebody. But you have to see, like, I'm just gonna say this. When I am in the full self-driving mode, such as it is now, again, this is version 10 as of the first week of January in 2021, I'm actually more stressed. I'm thinking about it more than if I was driving. And I understand that probably sounds, you know, like, are you kidding me? No, I mean, because it does weird shit. It fucks up. And so I'm sitting there constantly going like, is it gonna fuck up now? Is it gonna fuck up now? Is it gonna fuck up now? And it's not me being hyper vigilant because it does this stuff. And I'm like, oh yeah, I'm really glad that I was like totally paying attention the whole time. Because if I wasn't, you know, like maybe it'd be okay, but I don't have any confidence. I'm pretty sure it would have done something catastrophically bad already. I've not even had the thing that long. So, yeah. Will they get there? I don't know. You could do a lot with a little. So, you know, I mean, if you look at human vision and you consider, you know, my vision's not that great. And when I say that, I don't mean like relative to humans, but relative to having a complete panoptic view of everything around me. You know, human vision's not that great. We're pretty limited. We're moving around, but you can drive pretty well. Getting to that level, it's challenging. But it can be done, I think, technically. Having a lot of processing, I mean, there are things that you can do without like crazy amounts of processing. And there are things where you can put tons of processing in and basically not get anywhere. So they could do it. I don't have a ton of confidence. Let's just say that. I think there's a very high bullshit factor there. Not like, I guess on the Elon Musk scale, you know, you have the Boring Company, really high bullshit factor. You have the Hyperloop, which is like massively high bullshit factor. And then you have like SpaceX, where you're like, yeah, not that much bullshit factor. Like the SpaceX shit, you look at that and you're like, pretty much all the stuff he talks about there, I totally think he could do. And when I say he, obviously, I mean the team. But, you know, not the SpaceX level, but it's probably pretty close. Exaggerated, a lot of marketing stuff, a lot of bullshit. But, you know, much better, much more grounded in reality than the Boring Company. Which also, like, don't even fucking get me started on that. I could go off on that one and the stupidity of the whole plan versus just putting in trains like I was gonna say submarines, subways or a metro or a tube or underground, whatever, you know. But never mind that now. You know, Tesla is not as bullshit as that. The Hyperloop thing is massively, massively full of shit. And I don't think that it's even that he means to be massively full of shit. I think he just doesn't know enough to be able to realize, and he's also had so many things kind of work out for him, you know, that he's got a little bit of overconfidence and a lot of Dunning-Kruger going. But anyway, this is not about those companies. Tesla, you know, toward the SpaceX end of the spectrum, but not all the way there. So what I was getting to, like the car's an asshole. If you let it run on city streets, and again, maybe they fix this, but light changes, it like floors it. doesn't gradually go up the speed. It just like, and there's no setting to adjust this. You can go comfort versus, you can prefer different things in terms of performance and steering and all this kind of stuff. For the self-driving does not seem to have a thing. And then you'll have something where, okay, there's a light coming up and it goes like full speed, and then it detects the light, and then way after it detects the light and asks you to confirm to go through or not, it slams on the brakes. And you're like, come on, just slow down. Literally, like if I just take the thing off cruise then and let it coast, it works better. It's more comfortable, gets me to the light at the same time, but without the kind of like rapid speed and then rapid acceleration with a couple jerks in the front and back. Like, why the fuck would you even do this profile? I don't know. And there's also, like, again, I wish there was a setting for this kind of stuff. If you want your car to drive like an asshole, program it to do that. If you want your car to be super courteous, program it to do that. Yeah, just, I wish. The updates are cool. I had a service appointment already. This is one of those fucking things that I drove it someplace and I was in a parking lot, and I don't know if it's the heat pump or what. I think it was the heat pump. Started making a weird sound like boiling, like kind of this hissing sound. Hopefully nothing leaking, but it was not the most reassuring sound. And then it wasn't blowing hot air, it was just blowing cool air for a while. And I saw this and I was like, oh shit, did I lose heat? Oh shit, am I leaking shit in there someplace? Do I need it cleaned up? Made an appointment. I canceled it because it wasn't, I couldn't reproduce the bug. It started going back to normal again. And the guy was like, well, let's come out and check it out. It's worth doing just to rule anything out. And I kind of said, fine. They come out, and it's kind of nice, actually. Like, come to your place, check the thing out. They have obviously like a diagnostic suite. One of the things with the car being not only computers, I mean, the Prius was all computers too, but it's sort of like an iPhone in the sense that, okay, it's running application system that you can talk to, and you can easily, without connecting like to an OBD port or something, run a diagnostic and run tests and stuff, and they can do that. It's a little weird that they can unlock the car for you. It's a little, unnerving about that, but at the same time, it's kind of nice, and if you trust the diagnostic people, why not? So they didn't find anything, didn't charge me for it, but also, so it was a good experience. Reasonable amount of aseptic technique, masks and such, but also like, I don't feel great about anybody doing any kind of stuff like that. And then I guess the last thing I want to talk about, and this has definitely gone over an hour, and I'm losing my my voice here too. The last thing is charging. So this is probably, like, if you're thinking about an electric car, it's one of the things that probably comes up and a lot. Charging, is it practical? And my experience so far, I have a 220 volt outlet, much nicer. It's much more comfortable to charge faster. But before I got that, I had the 110, so just a standard house outlet. And with my day-to-day driving, and even including like driving to downtown Phoenix, so say 100 kilometers at most a day, I could easily charge it during the rest of the day or during the night when I wasn't using it, and stay up to 400. I've got mine set to kind of cap at 400 kilometers. I don't charge it to the full capacity because they're lithium-ion batteries, and they will, start. Their age will degrade faster. Their cycle life will degrade faster if you charge them fully. So I keep it, sort of in that 80% range. Does it actually help? I don't know, but I don't need it more than that. And if I take a trip, I'll dial it up. But for now, seems fine. And with the 110, totally easy. I would definitely, and I'm probably going to do this at some point, but if you're between a couple of different places, it'd be nice to have a 110, one of these things at each place, and then have one just sitting in the car, and then you could just plug it in, plug it out, and every time you park, just as a matter of course, you connect it. You don't even have to think about it. It's pretty nice. It's actually like not bad. I've not had any, I've never come close to what I would call range anxiety, but I've also not taken it on a long trip yet. So I don't really want to review that part yet. I don't really have a thing to review. But the gist of all of this anyway is, got the Tesla. People are messaging me and it's driving me nuts. It's one downside of actually having notes. It's a nice thing about not having notes usually, because I don't have notes. I don't have this. But I have notes, and I probably have to just put this in airplane mode because beep, beep, beep. It's fucking annoying. But anyway, with that, the charging thing, deal with. I do wish, I briefly had, SRP has like an off-peak EV plan. I got that for like 2 or 3 days, and then I looked at the numbers and just kind of decided it was dumb. Not because I don't think it's worthwhile, but because the Tesla, you can tell it, okay, don't charge until this time, but then charge at this time, or I want to be ready at this time, so start charging. The problem is it doesn't really have a way to put in the peak and off-peak hours so that it could optimize for, like, okay, I'm going to take a little sip now just to keep you kind of at this level, even though it's at the high, the peak hours or super peak. But then if I get to the off-peak time, I'm just going to go as, drink full and fill up. It'd be really nice if it did that. It also doesn't help that I've got, my place where I have the 220 and all this, and I had at the time, at the time being like a few days ago, I had the electric vehicle plan. So if I did program it, I'd be at my girlfriend's place, and she just has a normal plan, and so it'd be doing a weird schedule, and there it'd be on the 110, which is a much lower rate of charge. Be kind of a... So anyway, if it had more support for that, it would be nice. That being said, I'm not saying I would necessarily recommend it, because Musk is very problematic. But I'm also not saying I wouldn't recommend it, because there are a lot of nice things about the car. It's one of the purchases in my life that I've felt the most ambivalent about. And I really, to be fair, I kind of didn't want to do one of these at all, or at least talk about it, until the next time I picked up Gil for lunch, and he'd just, be expecting the Prius, and he'd hop into a Tesla and be like, what the fuck happened here? But because of the pandemic, who the fuck knows when that's going to be? So, why not talk about it? I also feel a little weird talking about it. I feel in the same way that I feel weird about flying. There's no environmental argument for flying a general aviation. It's really nice, I have to say. Yesterday I did my last cross country for my private pilot's license, and cross country here is, I think, 150 nautical miles. Went from Chandler to Prescott to Wickenburg and back to Chandler. It was my first time landing at an airport I've never been to before, which was weird, but also fine. My second time landing at an untowered airport, which was also a little weird, but also fine. But at the same time, I really enjoy that. The car, you're like, in terms of, depends on how your electricity is produced, but even if it's produced with very inefficient means and you factor in transmission losses, electric cars are so much more efficient. This is a crazy thing. You look at the MPGe, the electrical equivalent miles per gallon. So like how many miles you're getting on a certain unit of fuel energy, of hydrocarbon energy. My Prius was pretty good. I'd get like 45, maybe 50 miles to the gallon. If I really drove like hyper mild, I could get like 55. But I drive like normally, which is, not really doing anything particularly slow or like not really trying, I'd still get, even just doing that, I'd still get 45, kind of like average, which was pretty good. But that's like 8.6 miles or 8.6 seconds to get 0 to 60. It does have, now the Prius has an electric motor, surprising amount of torque at 0 because of that, but still a Prius is not a sports car by any means. The Tesla, I have to say, you look at the MPGe rating and it's more than twice, significantly more than twice the Prius, but it's a nice sporty car, feels really nice, issues notwithstanding. Can't complain that much about that stuff. And, so again, though, you have the Elon Musk stuff, which is, between the work law stuff and all the other stuff that I mentioned about him, I don't feel 100% good about it. Just like I don't feel 100% good about flying, but I still made the decision to fly. So judge me again as you will. I will talk more about this later, probably, but I don't want tangents to be like the Tesla channel. There are plenty of those already. So, yeah. And I'm sure if you're interested in Teslas, probably not as interested in the rambly guy picking on Elon Musk, who still, despite saying all these negative things about him, bought his fucking car. Go figure. I also said a ton of shit about motherfucker who is our president-elect. I still voted for the asshole because Trump sucks so much more. It's like, what the fuck are you gonna do? It's a terrible, this seems to be the general, this is gonna be the closing for this, but it just seems to be a general problem that you can't make, obviously life is messy, but it would be really nice if you could just, like, voting for Bernie, I didn't feel bad about at all. I'm not saying he's perfect, but 100% good about that in terms of, or at least as close to how I could get. The biggest criticism I have of the guy is that rather than making a national health service and trying to do that, we're doing this Medicare for all thing, which I still like, but I would much rather go further, or at least aim further and then have some place to roll back to. Because the Medicare for all, if we did it, would be awesome. But if you don't get there, and you fall back to, say, single pay, or fall back to, say, a public option, it's not really that good and ends up probably, depending on how you implement it, being a huge gift to insurance industry and medical industry and all this. I don't know. It's not like a huge thing, but it bugs me. There are things I wish that Bernie would have been a little bit stronger. But again, I'm like almost all the way there with the guy and what he did. Tesla, I feel like, I feel pretty good about, I do like the car, but I have a lot of ambivalence about Musk and the company. So it's more like, it's like this Georgia election. Like, 51% went one way and it was not that much the other way, but it was, pretty close. So anyway, with that, I will be back next week. And as always, 再见。